Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another Magic Arena gameplay video. Today we're taking a look at the blue-black starter deck, Walk the Plank. First off, we'll take a look at the deck list and play a game with the deck without making any changes to it out of the box. And then afterwards I'll show you how I would personally gradually upgrade the deck. We'll go over all those gradual changes and then play some games with the fully upgraded deck as well to get a better feel for it. So let's take a look at the deck list here. Walk the Plank is a blue-black pirate deck. Even though the starter deck doesn't have a ton of built-in pirate synergies yet, that's definitely something we will start introducing as we gradually upgrade the deck. But for now, let's take a look at the deck list. At 1 mana we've got 3 copies of Siren Stormtamer, which is a pretty good 1-drop as a 1/1 flyer that has the ability for a blue mana to sacrifice a Stormtamer and then counter target spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. So you could even use this to counter a Settler Wreckage, which targets a player, but the more common play pattern is just to save one of your other creatures from a spot removal spell. Then we've got 3 copies of Grasping Scoundrel as a 1 mana 1/1 pirate that gets +1/+0 as long as it's attacking, so attacks as a 2/1. We've got 2 copies of Chart of Course, which lets us draw 2 cards, and then we have to discard a card unless we've attacked with a creature this turn. We've got 3 copies of Departed Deckhand from M19 as a 2 mana 2/2 Spirit Pirate that has to be sacrificed when it becomes the target of a spell, and Departed Deckhand can be blocked except by spirits, and there's not too many spirits in standard, so it's pretty much unblockable. And for a 3 and a blue, another target creature we control can be blocked this turn except by spirits, so also pretty much becomes unblockable. Then we also have some copies of Kitesail Corsair as another pirate, 2 mana for a 2/1 that has flying as long as it's attacking. We also have a 1 of Direfleet Poisoner, 2 mana for a 2/2 pirate that has flash and death touch, so we can play it at instant speed. And when the Poisoner enters the battlefield, target attacking pirate we control gets +1/+1 and gains death touch until end of turn. So on offense you can kind of use it as a combat trick to boost up one of our other pirates, and on defense you can also use it to ambush opposing attacking creatures. Can even take out hexproof creatures if you can successfully block them, like opposing Carnage Tyrants for example. So Poisoner definitely has its uses. Then we also have 2 copies of Kitesail Freebooter to add a bit of disruption to the deck as a 2 mana pirate that's a 1/2 with flying, and when the Freebooter enters the battlefield, target opponent has to reveal their hand and you can choose a non-creature, non-land card from it and exile that card until Kitesail Freebooter leaves the battlefield. But with cards like Siren Stormtamer, we can easily protect our Kitesail Freebooter to prevent our opponent from killing the Freebooter and getting their card back. Then we have 2 copies of Exclusion Mage, 3 mana for a 2/2 human wizard, so it's not a pirate, and when the mage enters the battlefield you can return target creature an opponent controls back to its owner's hand, so a bit of a tempo play that plays well with the more aggressive angle that the deck can have. We've got 2 copies of Fathom Fleet Border, another pirate, 3 mana for a 3/3 that when it enters the battlefield you lose 2 life unless you control another pirate, so if we do have another pirate in play we don't get the drawback. Then moving on, we've got Murder as our main removal spell, 3 mana for an instant that destroys target creature, no questions asked. We've got 1 Ruin Raider as another pirate, 3 mana for a 3/2, with a raid that says at the beginning of your end step, if you've attacked with a creature this turn, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand, and you lose life equal to that card's converted mana costs. So this is potentially a very powerful card draw engine, but you do have to be careful and not play too many expensive cards, otherwise you might end up losing to your own Ruin Raider. Then we've got 2 copies of Deadeye Righauler, 4 mana for a 3/2 pirate with a raid. When the Righauler enters the battlefield, if you've attacked with a creature this turn, you can return target creature to its owner's hand. We've got a Dreamcaller Siren as a 4 mana 3/3 pirate with flash and flying, so we can play it at instant speed. And Dreamcaller Siren can block only creatures with flying, so it's meant to be attacking. And when the Dreamcaller Siren enters the battlefield, if you control another pirate, tap up to 2 target non-land permanents, so you can play the Siren in the opponent's turn and tap down their 2 largest creatures before they get a chance to attack to prevent a lot of damage. We also have 2 copies of Siren Reaver as a 4 mana 3/2 Siren Pirate with flying, and it also has a raid, making the Siren cost 1 generic mana less to cast if we've attacked with a creature. We also have 2 copies of Ravenous Chupacabra as a 4 mana 2/2 that when it enters the battlefield destroys target creature an opponent controls, so also not a pirate, but a pretty good card regardless. We also have a 1 of Hostage Taker which can steal an opposing artifact or creature. We've got a Riddle Master Sphinx as a curve topper, 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield you can also bounce an opposing creature. And a 1 of Demon Lord Belzenlock as a 6 mana 6/6 with flying and trample, and it draws us some extra cards at the cost of some life. And then the mana base is 10 islands, 10 swamps, 1 rare dual land, and then 4 submerged boneyards, which enter the battlefield tapped. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand looks pretty good. We've got a nice curve of creatures, both are colors of mana. Just maybe missing a bit of removal, but we've got Exclusion Mage that can bounce something to buy some time. So we can lead with a turn 1 Siren Stormtamer. And let's see what we're up against. Opponent on black-white, so it could be the life gain deck. We're just gonna play Deckhand, attack for 1. And then next turn we have to decide between the Exclusion Mage or the Border and a Bishop Soldier, alright. So 2/2 lifelink. So here I think I'm okay playing the Border since it still blocks the Bishop Soldier pretty well. So I don't feel compelled to bounce the Bishop Soldier necessarily. So we can attack for 3. And then play the Border, which does not lose us any life here. And then we'll see if they have an answer for the Border or if they do something else. Alright, it's going to be an Ajani's Bridemaid. And they are attacking with the Bishop Soldier, so that could mean that they've got a Nightmarish Thirst here, or they just want to grow the Ajani's Bridemaid. Seems unlikely, so they might also just have a pump spell, giving the Bishop Soldier +2/+2 for example. So kind of a tough spot, since if they have a trick, blocking with the Border would not turn out well for us. But I think I'm gonna make him have it here, since otherwise the Bridemaid gets to grow for free, we give our opponent 2 life, and the trick is still gonna be in their hand, so let's find out. Alright, it was a moment of triumph, sadly. Alright, Demon Lord Balzanlock gives us something to work towards. So here we can play Exclusion Mage, bouncing the Bridemaids. And we can keep attacking. And play an island. So let's trade. Alright. Let's attack for 3. Opponent's been gaining quite a bit of life here, which is not great against our more aggressive plan of getting in a bit of evasive damage. Ajani's Welcome. So they probably don't have another creature here, otherwise we would have seen Welcome into a creature main phase. Alright, Rig Hauler's not bad, but we're definitely gonna just play a Demon Lord here. Although, I guess we could wait, since we do have a Siren Stormtamer in play, so if we wait until we have 1 more mana, we can play the Demon Lord and protect it with the Stormtamer's ability, in case they have something like a Vraska's Contempt in hand, which is somewhat likely. Yeah, don't mind just playing the Rig Hauler here. Bouncing the Bridemaid, sending the opponent back a bit. And we'll definitely still play the land here, since that way if we draw land we get to have 7 mana for Demon Lord plus Stormtamer. They did not have a Vraska's Contempt end of turn, so maybe they don't have one in hand. Or maybe a Murder. Opponent just replays Bridemaid, says go. Well, we can make our Rig Hauler unblockable here, but I'm fine trading Rig Hauler for Bridemaid. The question is, does our opponent have another combat trick? They didn't have a trick when they attacked with the Bishop Soldier into our Exclusion Mage, so presumably they don't, but that's definitely not a guarantee. And if we make the Rig Hauler unblockable, then we don't have the mana to also play Corsair and keep up Stormtamer, but maybe that's okay. We'll just make this unblockable and add a Corsair to the board. Alright, opponent has a Settler Wreckage, which we can counter with the Stormtamer here. Question is, do we want to? I think we do. Opponent down to 11. And a Vraska's Contempt on the Deckhand has the advantage of fizzling the Vraska's Contempt, since our creature dies when it becomes targeted, so our opponent does not gain the 2 life, and the Pridemate stays a 3/3 here. So that worked out well. They've got 1 card left in hand, and we were able to sort of bait out the Vraska's Contempt before playing the Demon Lord. So let's start by attacking. And now we have the option of going Charter Course plus Corsair, or we can just play Demon Lord. I'm guessing if our opponent had another removal spell, they would have used it by now on the Rig Hauler, so I think I'm okay playing a Demon Lord. And we drew into another Deckhand at the cost of 1 life, that's okay. So next turn we could play the Deckhand and make the Rig Hauler unblockable to get in for 9 points. Opponent's got an Epicure of Blood, which gains them 1 life and also drains us for 1 thanks to the Epicure, but we're still getting in for 9 damage next turn, so they've got to have something else. Opponent says go, so I think we go for it here. Play Deckhand. Make Rig Hauler unblockable. Get in for 9. Sweet. So managed to beat the black-white life gain deck here with Walk the Plank. Alright, now that we got to see the deck in action, it's time to start upgrading the deck, and as I've mentioned, I'm going to try and introduce more pirate synergies within the deck to make it worthwhile to play all these pirates to begin with. And first off, I'll go over all the commons I want to add to the deck in order of importance, and then I'll do the same with the uncommons and the rares, as we won't be needing any mythic rares in this particular build. So the first common I'm going to add to the deck is 2 copies of Deadweight as a nice cheap removal spell, enchanting an opposing creature, giving it -2/-2, and often killing it on the spot, just to kind of lower the curve of the deck a bit, which is especially going to be important once we start adding more copies of Ruin Raider, since we don't want to be revealing too many expensive cards to the Ruin Raider. And then the next card we want to add to our deck is 1 copy of March of the Drowned as a 1-mana sorcery that lets us return 2 target pirate cards from our graveyard to our hand. So in the late game this can be a nice 2-for-1, and just at 1 mana it's pretty cheap, plus it's a nice payoff card for being a pirate deck. So we will add 1 copy of March of the Drowned to our deck, and to make room for the newly added cards we could easily cut 1 land since we don't really need 25 to begin with. And I'll cut an island here since we do need double black a little bit more than we need double blue. And then we need to make 2 more cuts. I could see cutting some of the more expensive cards at first, but they can potentially win the game by themselves despite not being pirates. We could cut the Deadeye Rig Hauler as one of the weaker ones, or Exclusion Mage, since it's not a pirate. I think for now I'll just cut 2 Deadeye Rig Haulers, but in the end we'll end up making many more cuts, so it's not too important now. So that's it for all the commons we want to add to the deck. Then next up, moving on to the uncommons. First we can complete some of the playsets of uncommons we already have in the deck, so we can easily add a 4th copy of Siren Stormtamer. We can also add another copy of Departed Deckhand as a nice evasive creature, and then we want to add 2 more copies of Kitesail Freebooter as a nice disruptive element. So we go up to 4 copies of Kitesail Freebooter as well, to make room for the new additions. I'm not the biggest fan of Grasping Scoundrel since it gets blocked so easily, so we can definitely cut Scoundrels. And then the next uncommon we want to add to the deck is 4 copies of Lookout's Dispersal, 3 mana for an instant that counters target spell unless its controller pays 4 generic mana, and Lookout's Dispersal costs 1 generic mana less to cast if you control a pirate. It's another payoff card for being a pirate deck, and at 2 mana this is a very powerful counterspell to be able to keep up to deal with any problematic card our opponent plays. So we'll add 4 copies of Lookout's Dispersal to the deck. And by adding Lookout's Dispersal to our deck, as we slowly start to introduce more pirate synergies, we want to start cutting some of the non-pirate creatures out of our deck, so the Exclusion Mages can go, and despite being very good cards, the Ravenous Chupacabras can go as well, since now that we have more counterspells in the form of Lookout's Dispersal, we don't need the retroactive removal spell that the Chupacabra is as much. And then the last uncommon we want to add to the deck is 2 copies of Cast Down as another cheap removal spell that can destroy target a non-legendary creature, which for the most part is an upgrade over Murder, since there's not that many legendary creatures that we care about killing, so we can cut our 3 copies of Murder. And we're back down to 60. So now it's time to add some more rares to our deck. The first rares we want to add is some copies of the rares that we already have in our deck. So we'll be adding 2 more copies of Ruin Raider as a powerful card draw engine, so we'll go up to 3. By adding more copies of Ruin Raider, we don't need some of the expensive cards as much, since it'll end up hurting us quite a bit if we flip them over with Ruin Raider. And now that we have more card draw thanks to Ruin Raider, we don't need to card draw from Demon Lord Balls Unlock as much, even though it is a powerful card and it can win the game by itself, as we saw in the first game we played. We will be cutting the Demon Lord Balls Unlock now. And then the Riddle Master Sphinx can go as well, since we don't really want to be flipping a 6-drop to our Ruin Raider. And then we can also add a second copy of Hostage Taker as another powerful pirate, and a second copy of Dreamcaller Siren, which also plays well with all the instants we've added to the deck, like Lookout's Dispersal. We can keep up our counterspell, and if our opponent doesn't play anything worth countering, we can maybe flash in a Dreamcaller Siren end of turn, tap 2 blockers down and keep attacking. So second Dreamcaller Siren we will add to the deck as well, and then we can cut the 2 Siren Reavers to make room for the newly added 4-drops. Then the next rare we want to add to our deck is 2 copies of Fell Flagship, 3 mana for a vehicle that gives pirates we control +1/+0 even if it's not crewed. And then if we do crew it with a total of 3 or more power, then the Fell Flagship turns into a 3/3 creature, and when it deals combat damage to a player, that player has to discard a card. So it provides a powerful Anthem effect, especially combined with all our evasive pirates that can easily keep getting in there. Also makes it easier to crew the Fell Flagship, since now our pirates have 1 additional power, and also gives us something proactive that we can play into a potential sweeper effect without having to worry about losing the Fell Flagship. So we'll add 2 copies of the flagship to the deck, and we'll cut 2 copies of the border, which is pretty weak. And then the next rare we want to add to the deck is 4 copies of Fathom Fleet Captain, 2 mana for a 2/1 with Menace, so it can be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. And whenever the Fathom Fleet Captain attacks, if we control another non-token pirate, we can pay 2 generic mana to make a 2/2 black pirate creature token with Menace. So a very powerful effect that can get out of hand very quickly and gives us something to do with our mana in the mid and late game. So we'll add the full 4 copies of Fathom Fleet Captain. And now we can cut some of the other 2-drops out of the deck, like for example the Kitesail Corsair, despite being a totally fine card. We can definitely cut it here. And now that we've added more copies of Ruin Raider, the Charter Course can go as well. And we'll even cut the second copy of Charter Course as we add our last rare, which is going to be a Vanquisher's Banner. As it enters the battlefield, we have to choose a creature type, which in our case is going to be Pirate, and then pirates we control get +1/+1, and whenever we cast a pirate, we get to draw a card. So just a very powerful Anthem effect that gives us a ton of card draw in the late game, and makes up for the fact that we just got another Charter Course. So that covers the main deck in terms of spells, but we can still improve the mana base a little bit. If you happen to already have some copies of Unclaimed Territory, that's a land you could consider adding to the deck, since we've got quite a few creatures in the deck. And of course, naming Pirate will help us cast both blue and black pirates. But we also have a fair number of non-creature spells in our deck, which we want to cast, some of them blue, some of them black. So I think the ideal mana base probably doesn't involve Unclaimed Territory, and instead we just want to add 4 copies of Watery Grave, alongside adding the full 4 copies of Drowned Catacomb. And then we can cut the Submerged Boneyard, and then we want an even number of swamps and islands. So that covers the entire main deck. Then going over the sideboard, I'll give you some ideas of which cards you could potentially add to the sideboard. Against control decks, you can add up to 4 copies of Duress to take away non-creature non-land cards from their hand for just a single black mana. We can add 1 copy of Negate to counter non-creature spells. We can add 1 copy of Spell Pierce to mix it up as a cheaper version of Negate that counters target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2 generic mana, so it's a bit easier to keep up than Negate. And we can also add 2 copies of Disdainful Stroke, which is useful against both creatures and non-creature heavy decks to counter target spell with convert mana cost 4 or greater. Then against the aggro decks, you could consider something like a Sailor of Means as a nice 1/4 pirate that blocks Adanto Vanguards pretty well, also makes a treasure token so it helps us ramp a little bit. So we can add 2 copies of Sailor of Means to the sideboard as well. Moment of Craving is a nice cheap removal spell that gives target creature -2/-2 and gains us 2 life, so also shines against the more aggressive decks. Could also add 1 copy of Vraska's Contempt as another removal spell that can also help us deal with planeswalkers from the opponent. And then last but not least, we could also add 2 copies of Deadeye Tracker as an effective way to fight the graveyard from the opponent. Plus it's also pirate, so it has some built-in synergies as well. So adding 2 copies of Deadeye Tracker would round out the sideboard, but there's many other cards you could consider as well. And then the last thing we have to do is choose the basic land art, which is always an important step when building any deck. So we'll type island in the search bar, hit enter, and then under filters, click reset, and then all the basic land arts will appear. We'll choose a nice pirate-themed land here. This one's nice as it has some ships in the foreground. So we'll add some of those basic islands, and then we can do the same for the basic swamp as well. Type in swamp, hit enter, filter, go reset, and we'll add another nice one here, this one for example. Add 8 of those, and that rounds out our deck. Just need to change the picture. I guess we'll choose our Fathom Fleet captain here. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand looks totally fine. We've got a nice cheap deadweight we can cast alongside some disruptive 2-drops as well with a Freebooter. And then a Dreamcaller Siren, which can come in handy as well. Let's see what we're up against. A red-white deck. I don't mind taking a look with Freebooter here, so we've got a better idea how to sequence our cards. And alright, our opponent's got a pretty aggressive red-white deck here with lots of targets for the Freebooter, so Integrity Intervention. Intervention could deal 3 damage and potentially kill Freebooter. Response Resurgence for 2 mana could deal 5 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. And Reinforcements is kind of the way they have to get on the board and deal a ton of damage. Probably want to take one of the 2 removal spells, and I think we prefer taking the Response Resurgence for now, as it's the cheaper one. And they've got a lot of 4 mana plays now between the Reinforcements, the Captain, and the Integrity Intervention, so they won't be able to curve out as well. So now we have the option of either playing a Fell Flagship attacking for 2 or just playing a Deckhand before we play a Flagship. I think I still like playing the Flagship, since then we can crew it next turn using a Deckhand and start making the opponent discard. Get in for 2. Put him to 18. And it's going to be a Tajik getting him for 3 here. But we can kill it with a deadweight, so it's not the end of the world. So we can deadweight Tajik, play Departed Deckhand, crew Fell Flagship, make him discard. Seems good, and then we can play a tapped Watery Grave as well. And our opponent decided to discard Integrity Intervention, alright. Kill Tajik after making them discard, so they had less information to work with. And our opponent scoops it up, alright, well, opponent mulliganed, and then we took a card out of their hand with a Freebooter, made them discard with a Fell Flagship, and they were pretty low on cards there. And it was only going to get worse as we're going to keep hitting them with a Fell Flagship and add more evasive threats to the board. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. And this hand's okay. Bit clunky, a few too many expensive cards maybe, but hopefully we'll draw the lands we need. Alright, let's play islands, say go. Opponent on blue-red. Let's play a captain, which might just die on the spot, but don't have much of a choice. So they're gonna lightning strike it. Nope, it's gonna be a shock, dealing 2 damage to it. So next turn we can decide between keeping up our counterspell or tapping out for a Ruin Raider. Probably still fine to play the Ruin Raider here. At 4 mana they could have something like a Crackling Drake perhaps, but they seem to be on the slightly more controlling version, which could easily still have a Crackling Drake that we want to counter. So yeah, maybe we do just say go here. And then we can start applying a bit of pressure by flashing in the Siren at end of turn here. Or we could play a Deckhand and still keep up Dispersal. I think I'm gonna go for the end of turn Dreamcaller Siren. Right, we get to untap. attack. And now we get to play Ruin Raider and get a card right away. Unless they kill it, but they don't. And we still have our Lookout's Dispersal at the ready. So that's kind of how you have to try and be tricky to beat counter spells out of a control deck. A Lava Coil for the Siren, that's fine. We much prefer to keep our Ruin Raider around. And a Departed Deckhand to draw. So let's send for 3. Enable Raid. And we definitely want to keep up our Lookout's Dispersal here, so we only get to play one of our 2-drops. And I guess we'll play the Captain, since that threatens to make more pirates by itself. Find a land, that's good. Doesn't cost us any life. And Discovery, sure. So it looks like they're on a Phoenix deck after all, but they haven't cast many spells so far, so who knows. They leave both cards on top. And they've got some white in there as well. Alright, so they might be a Jeskai deck after all. Clarion we can definitely counter. So that worked out. And now we might be able to resolve our Vanquisher's banner, which, if that sticks around, can also win the game by itself. Alright, they do have a second Lava Coil, sadly, to kill our Ruin Raider. So I think we still play the banner here. Sadly, we don't get to do anything else. Alternatively, we could play a Deckhand, attack with the Captain, and then make a Pirate token using the Captain. And could even play another Deckhand, but then we're playing into another sweeper effect. I think we prefer playing the banner first. Make them deal with the banner. Get in for 3 down to 9. And now we don't really care if they have another sweeper effect. It's gonna be a Crackling Drake, which we can steal with Hostage Taker, but we won't be able to replay the Drake right away. And Enigma Drake as well. Cast down was definitely a good draw. So what we can do is Hostage Take the Enigma Drake and then be able to replay it right away. We don't get to draw the card like we do with Crackling Drake, but I think that's still fine, since we don't have to worry about our opponent killing our Hostage Taker. So we can send for 3. Won't make a pirate here, but we'll just play Enigma Drake. And this Kitesail Freebooter is going to come in handy as well. Now 2 of our creatures survive an opposing Clarion. Alright, they do have another Clarion anyway, giving the Crackling Drake lifelink, but now Enigma Drake would just trade for Crackling Drake. So that's fine by me. But they might do it anyway just to be able to gain a bit of life with the Crackling Drake so they don't die on the way back. But we're not really worried about the late game with the banner in play, so we just want to survive here essentially. So if we can make some plays that are more conservative, we will probably do so. Opponent did find a Beacon Bolt, which they can jumpstart here if they want to, but they decided not to go for it. Alright. Alright, now what? Can probably lead with the Kitesail Freebooter to check out our last card, even though we will be unable to take the Beacon Bolt in the graveyard, so they will still be able to kill the Freebooter if they want to. Alright, they're holding another Crackling Drake. But now we can just cast down. And we're only attacking for 5 now, but what we can do is play Departed Deckhand, hold full control, draw a card. Sure, we'll see what we draw, I guess. And then use Dispersal, countering our own Deckhand, just to put an extra instant in our graveyard for the Enigma Drake. So we can attack for 6 here. And we know our opponent doesn't have any interaction, so this will be lethal. Sweet. Managed to beat Jeskai Drakes. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, and this hand's quite good. Turn 1 Stormtamer, turn 2 either Dispersal or Captain, turn 3 Flagship. It's a good curve. Turn 1 untap Steam Vents, either for a shock or an opt, which is probably more likely. So I think we do still play the Stormtamer here and hope that it's opt and not shock. It is an opt indeed. Sulfur Falls into Goblin Electromancer. Alright. So I think we do probably still tap out for a captain instead of keeping up Dispersal here. It's mostly at 4 mana that we have to be careful for potential Crackling Drakes. So let's get in for one. Play a captain. So let's see what our opponent can do here with the discount from Electromancer. They're gonna lead with Discovery for 1 mana. What's our best draw next turn? Maybe something like a Deadweight to kill Electromancer, so we can still either make a token with a captain or keep up Dispersal. That would be ideal. Opponent with a Chart Course. Discards a second Electromancer. And we also see Crackling Drake going to the graveyard, so our opponent may be struggling to hit their land drops. And they still have 1 red mana up, which they could use to maybe kill a captain here. Instead it's going to be Tormenting Voice, discarding Maximize Velocity. Alright. So yeah, now we definitely want to keep up our Dispersal to counter potential future Crackling Drakes, even though it is tempting to just run out a Rune Raider here. But I don't think it's worth it. Our opponent is also going to be pretty suspicious here, since we didn't make a token with a captain. But I think it's just too important to keep up our Dispersal here. If they don't play into it, sadly we can't do much else. But then next turn we can at least play a 2-drop alongside keeping up Dispersal. Alright, opponent jams a Crackling Drake anyway, so a little bit surprising, but not gonna complain. And they get in for 2 with the Electromancer. Alright, so now we could just steal the Electromancer with Hostage Taker, but then we won't be able to replay the Electromancer right away. So I think I prefer either playing Rune Raider or Fell Flagship. Getting the cards flowing with the Rune Raider would be nice. Fell Flagship would apply a bit more pressure. Alternatively, we could play a Deckhand and then make a token with a captain, which puts the most power and toughness into play, which might also be worth it, since then they might use removal while we are tapped out of Stormtamer. But I guess if we play Rune Raider, we can still protect it with a Stormtamer, so lots of options here. I think I'm probably leaning towards getting ahead on cards first with a Rune Raider, while keeping up protection with Stormtamer, and hope to draw into some more lands here. So next turn we would be able to maybe make a token, play a Deckhand, and still keep up Stormtamer. Opponent knows about Dreamcaller Siren, but Siren could come in handy as well to maybe get rid of a blocker. Opponent did discard a Phoenix here, so they might be able to get it back this turn. Alright, they're gonna opt. And they're gonna shock the Stormtamer, sure. So they will be able to get back the Phoenix here. Tormenting Voice discarding Enigma Drake, so their hand must be pretty stacked. Gets in for 5, definitely taking it. We probably want to keep up our Dreamcaller Siren in case their opponent plays a Drake and gives it haste with Maximize Velocity. We want to be able to prevent all that damage by tapping stuff down with Siren, which means we don't get to do anything else here. Just attacking for 5. And saying go. And what to reveal? Deadweight, that's a good one. So next turn we'll be able to get rid of a 2 toughness creature potentially. Alright, they're gonna just play a Drake. That's fine. So they would have lethal if they just maximize velocity it. But we have our Siren here to prevent it. Soul tap down the 2 flyers. And then we are threatening lethal on the way back. So if they don't have removal as one of their last cards, they would be dead. And our opponent packs it in. Awesome. So close game here against Is It Drake's deck. Alright, we're on the play, and we're missing black mana as well as cheap pirates to enable the dispersals, so I don't think we want to keep this hand. Alright, I mean, this hand's not good, but we have both colors, some early plays, and hopefully we scry into something relevant here. Cast down is tempting, but I think we just need to find more creatures, so I'm gonna bottom it anyway. Play turn 1 Stormtamer. And then what would be a good draw here, something like a Fathom Fleet Captain, which can start generating extra pirates by himself, would be nice. A Ruin Raider's not bad either. So let's get in for 1. And we could just play an island so our opponent thinks we're on the mono blue deck, perhaps. They might play around a Wizard's Retort. Alright, let's get in for 1. And then we'll have to decide between playing a Ruin Raider into a potential counterspell, or maybe playing a Deckhand. I think I like playing the Deckhand here. Then next turn we can play Ruin Raider with Stormtamer protection, but I'm kind of forced to play the Swamp here in case we need both Dead Weight and Ruin Raider next turn, so the jig is up in terms of pretending to be mono blue. This also plays around Syncopate, and we're happy if they Essence Scatter the Deckhand here. They might also have a Seal Away that they want to use on the Stormtamer here. Alright, opponent does nothing. That's fine by me. And alright, opponent seems to be green as well, so they're on a banned deck. Alright, let's just keep attacking. And then I will probably run out to Ruin Raider here, even though there's a chance that it gets countered. Opponent did have a Seal Away, that's fine. So the funny thing about Seal Away is that it's an ability once it gets in play, so if we do counter it with the Stormtamer, we would save the Deckhand, unlike a normal removal spell. That being said, I think we want to keep the Stormtamer to protect the Ruin Raider. So we're fine with this. So we'll play Ruin Raider, and now it doesn't get countered, so that's good. Try and get ahead on cards this way. And a Fell Flagship is not bad. Because of course normally Stormtamer is kind of a non-bow with the Departed Deckhand, since if they target it with a removal spell, even if you counter it with a Stormtamer, the Deckhand would still die. But Seal Away is an exception. So our opponent's got 4 mana, no double white, so we don't have to worry about Settle the Wreckage, despite having a Stormtamer, which kind of protects us from a Settle already. Opponent's gonna main phase a Chemist's Insight. Fair enough. And we drew a Lookout's Dispersal, that's perfect. So now we get to play a Fell Flagship to pump the team. Attack for 6. While keeping up our counterspell. And next turn we threaten to crew the Fell Flagship as well. And Captain's also a good draw here. Alright, let's see if our opponent maybe has a sweeper effect. Even if they did, and we didn't have Dispersal, having the Fell Flagship in play also gives us a way to recover from a sweeper effect a bit better. But I would definitely counter one here. Thaumatic Compass, that's fine. And our opponent packs it in. Alright, well. They still had a lot of cards in hand, but apparently not enough to beat what we had going on. So I'm not gonna complain. So the deck can definitely get some wins. There's also a lot of play to it, which makes the deck more interesting and fun to play, for me at least. It would probably struggle a bit more against the hyper-aggressive decks like Mono Red and the new Boros aggro decks that are out there. So those would be the bad matchups, but anything more mid-rangey or controlling, we stand a fair chance with our mix of counterspells and hand disruption with a Freebooter, and a bit of removal sprinkled in as well, with a bit of card advantage coming from Ruin Raider and or Vanquisher's Banner, for example. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me today for this upgrade guide. Feel free to let me know in the comments which deck you would like to see upgraded next. But for now, I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.